like having a garden but hate losing time to weeding it. Maybe you enjoy having flowers in your yard but hate getting your hands dirty. What if I told you there was a robot that was designed by the same people who introduced the world to robot vacuums, Roomba, and was proven as effective at handling weeds, independently tested by Cornell School of Agriculture? Have I piqued your interest? Let's get into it. Hello, I'm Wanderer001, and this is my review of the Tertill weed whacking robot, or robot weed whacker, or weeding robot, however you want to say that. This is what you've been looking for if you do not like going out and having to tend to a garden when it has weeds. And I myself am one of those people. What are you looking at with the Tertill weeding robot? You are looking at a piece of hardware that is 8.25 inches wide and has a height of 4.75 inches and weighs only 2.4 pounds, smaller than a Frisbee. It is ridiculous what you're getting in this. Let's take a look around the device. On the top here, you'll notice there is a giant solar panel for, again, the size of the device, because there is a lithium battery in here, and that's what's going to power this. This solar charger can keep the battery topped off in most cases during your summer months and depending on where you place this. The back of the device, as I'm calling it, has a button. This is your start, stop, and power on. You can press to hold like this, and now we've got some lights flashing up front. Those are LEDs, and now it's ready to go. And if I tap this again, charge, and off it goes. And it is trying very hard, so we're just gonna stop it right there so it doesn't attack my table. The business end, or the important part, is actually under here. So what you're looking at is, well, that's speaker. You heard it going off before, but you have these wheels, which are angled. When I hold the robot like this, you'll see they're angled inward and have these treads in them. That is the tiller part of this robot. These agitate the soil like a tiller would to keep things from growing. If, for whatever reason, something does start to grow, you have a little weed whacker right here. And the plastic bit here is replaceable, which I do like, because when I was first testing this out, I was stress testing it and kind of threw it into places where there are rocks and everything, and I broke those. You can buy replacements directly from Tertill, or there's a way that you can kind of cut one yourself and tie it off and shove it in there. I'll link to the video from the company itself showing you how to do that. Right here at the bottom, that is actually a plug, and if I unscrew this, there is a USB charging port. So if for whatever reason you're not getting enough sunlight to charge this, you can always bring this into your house and charge it using the USB. Now that is a micro USB port, that is not USB-C, so just keep that in mind. Tertill doesn't give you a cable for that. They expect you to do solar, so make sure you have something that can charge that. Tertill is waterproof. I have tested it, as you can see here, because, well, I want to make sure. This is going to be outside all the time. How water resistant is it? And I will also say, in the course of my testing, I actually purchased this last season and tested it all season, and I'm doing a review of it now before I put it out back into my garden to service me for another year. Now, normally by this time in the video, I talk about setup because, well, if it's a robot, there's a setup process for it. Surprisingly, the application for this, there's no setup process. You can put this down in your garden and tap and it goes. It's just like those original Roombas that would bounce around your room and arbitrarily eventually cover everything. So there actually is no setup. You can drop and go with this, which is great if you don't want to have to worry about setting something up if you're not technologically inclined, because you've got a green thumb and not a tech thumb, which I understand fully. Now, I mentioned one thing that is not included in the box, and that is a charging cable. But what besides the Tertill do you get in the box when you purchase this? Let's take a look. Starting off, you've got your basic laminated instruction sheet and mapping guide, because there is a specific plotting that you should do if you're going to use the Tertill to its best effectiveness. You also have a bag of replaceable strimmer heads as well as a wrench for fixing the Tertill should there be issues. Haven't had to use it yet, but it's nice that they included it. You also get plant guards and row guards. You get a set of 10 each, as well as those strim heads. You also get 10 of those as well. Now, the reason that you get those barriers for both the perimeter as well as around smaller plants. If I turn the Tertill to its side, plastic piece here, there's actually a sensor. And if a plant happens to touch it, it will not roll through it, or it will not try and strim it, which is the brains behind this. In the future, I do remember a questionnaire that came out from the company. They haven't done it yet, but through a firmware update, they are talking about having rampage mode, which will be more helpful for what I use it for, which will, regardless of if anything touches this, it gets weed whacked down. However, that is something for the future and not something that's in place right now. But you get the guards because there needs to be a barrier at least 4 inches high so the Tertill doesn't wander off on its own. And those circular guards are what you put around little plants that are just starting off that you don't want this to think is a weed and roll through them. Now, you can use something other than the guard barriers. If you've got bricks or wood, you could stack them up and keep this in a spot. I didn't have that option, so I got the guards. You can also purchase more guards if you need them. Ideally, for the best results with this, you want to space your plants between 9 to 12 inches apart, giving this enough room to pass through them. Also, you want a flat, level surface, removing debris, rocks, things of that nature. You also don't want to have a grade more than 7 degrees. If you do, this can flip itself over, which I'll show you a little later in the testing that I did. Ideally, you want to weed whack everything down first, rake it through and clean it up, and then set this thing loose. Let me show you just how much stress testing I did with not cleaning a bed, having a very ridiculous grade angle for this to try and get through, and show you how not to use the Tertill. Sends it out. You know you did it right because it'll say charge. Might have gotten itself stuck in a rut. Wait, there it goes. Looks like that stick might have gotten caught in the wheel. Now that you saw how not to use the Tertill, let's talk about how this actually functions, because that was something else that was a little worrisome for me when I first got it. The Tertill does not constantly run. In fact, it runs in spurts of 2 to 5 minutes for an hour to 2 hours a day, depending on what it's doing. If it's just rolling around, it can run longer. But if you're like me and you're weed whacking everything out of existence, well then it's going to run for a shorter amount of time. That also means that the internal battery has to have enough charge for it to roll around. So if the battery, in my experience, gets below 60%, it stops, goes into a passive hibernate state so that it can charge itself. You can always pick it up via the convenient little divot in the back that acts as a handle, bring it inside and charge if you don't want to wait for the sun to fully power this. The ideal operating parameters for this is in a bed that is no bigger than 200 square feet. If you have something larger than that, you might need to pick up another one because it's just too much for something like this to maintain. And you'll see in a moment what I'm talking about. Why don't we use that as a jumping off point to show you my better test in an actual garden that I took the time to actually take care of. Let's see it in action. So after 1 month, you can clearly see if it doesn't catch things, it will actually grow up. It does have a problem around corners and in corners, but it really depends on the bed itself. Now, some of this did get away from it because it kind of went dormant for a couple days and I didn't realize it. So it's good, but you do have to keep on top of it. So like this here is still low enough that this can get it, but it wasn't moving around for a couple of days, so it didn't really stay on top of things. And for contrast, this is the other side of the bed that was mowed down at the same time as this side, and you can clearly see that things have really gotten away. So it's been keeping up in this bed pretty well. There you saw, for the most part, it did pretty good, except in those corners and close to walls where this can't get to. Notice it's recessed. So just like a robot vacuum, that if you've got a bristle brush on one side and not the other side, it's only going to be able to sweep what it can get to. Now, that's not to say that this did a bad job. I just stuck it in a spot that was a little bigger than it could handle, and some of the plants that grew a little faster started to tap on this, which confused it and got it stuck. But if you work within the actual operating parameters of this, you'll be okay. I'm just stress testing it. You can know what to expect with this. But I did mention before that there was an application that came with this. Well, what do you actually use the application for? Let's take a look. This is the Tertill app for the Tertill automatic weeder. I have the robot off camera slightly over there. You'll notice if the robot is not turned on, there's nothing in the app. That's because the app communicates with the robot via Bluetooth. So we first have to turn the Tertill on. And now that it's on, you can see here is my Tertill. It's in standby mode. If it didn't automatically populate, I would just simply hit that refresh button and it would search for a new Tertill. Selecting which one we have, we get some information. Here we can see power status, so battery's at 100%. Clicking on it doesn't do anything. Temperature reading lets you know the ambient temperature where the Tertill happens to be. And then voltage. So this, if the Tertill was actually getting sunlight, and I'm going to try and hold it up to a light. Yeah, it's not getting enough light from a spotlight. Oh, there we go. There you can see basic wattage, letting you know what the solar is like for your Tertill. That's all on this screen right here. You can also see the current status of your Tertill. So right now it's in standby mode, meaning it's not actively going out and doing things. Coming back, if we come up to the sprocket right here, this is going to give us some information. Here we have our software update. Right now, mine is up to date. If there was anything that needed updating, it would be there. We have About. About's going to show you some interesting information. Off camera is the serial number for mine, the hardware revision, the software revision, manufacturer name, battery level, voltage, solar power, solar voltage, temperature, USB voltage, status, and comment, and build identifier. Selecting back, come back down. Here we have our upload data logs. So right here, it will pull information from the robot. So let's say you ran into an issue and it's doing something really weird. You would do this, gather all of that information from the robot so that you can send it to the manufacturer so that they can help diagnose what might be going on with your Tertill. I'm not going to let that complete because I'm going to come back. And then you have send information to Tertill. You have choices here as to what apps you want. Come back to our main screen, talk really quickly about this question mark, selecting that. Really, it's just going to bring you right to, hey, here's some Tertill information. Help us help you figure out what the problem is with your robot. And really, that's everything that you can do with the Tertill application for the Tertill automatic weeding robot. Ridiculously simple, bare bones application. I'm not faulting it for that. I like something that's user simple, so there's very little that you can screw up. I just wish that there was a way to force a firmware check rather than waiting for a push notification to come to you. All in all, I have been looking and waiting to get this robot. I finally convinced my wife that we needed to get one because we actually started a garden last year and I was the one stuck going out and weeding it and I just didn't have time to do that and these videos. So I convinced her to let me do both by getting the Tertill. The one thing I have to say about it is for what it does, it really is a toy. And I hate saying it like that. It is cost prohibitive. It is rather expensive for what it does. If you live that garden life, then maybe this is not out of the range of what you'd spend to maintain your garden. And if it's not, great. Hey, this was good. I would recommend it. If you are on the fence about it, I would wait. They normally do have sales on Amazon for this where you can drop up to $150 is what I saw last year. So if you are cost averse, I might wait until one of those sales, which also would probably be towards the end of the year, which means you'd have to use this next year. But let me tell you, I got this last year. I used it all last year. I am ready to throw this back out in my garden and keep the weeds away because it does exactly what it promises. It does require a little more attention than I thought it would, mainly being that it moved in spurts. If you didn't know that, you might think it's broken. Or it goes into a passive charging state. Give it 1 or 2 days. If it looks like it hasn't moved, you'll have to come double tap the button to get things started again. But those are small gripes to not having to go out and take my time to weed a garden that can get rather messy, especially depending on what you're growing. So if you haven't gotten the impression yet, if you can stomach the price tag for this, I strongly recommend the Tertill weeding robot here because it does exactly what it promises, and that's what you want with something like this. You don't want something complicated. With that being said, I have been Wanderer001. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the area below. And as always, thanks for watching.
If you found this video helpful, consider giving it a like, as that will help other people find the video as well. If you like what I'm doing here, you can always help fuel the next review by buying me a coffee, link in the description below. Last but not least, if you want to be notified when I upload a new video, you know what to do.